Okay, yeah, it's always a issue of tuning and training all of our programs for that, right?
Yeah.
So I think the final section that we're going to touch on specifically is going to go into malware. So looking at some of those info stealers that sometimes are the precursors to ransomware. But George, why don't you tell us about what we're seeing with malware right now?
Sure. Yeah, these trends, just like some of our other data, comes from what we're seeing internally, and we blend that with stuff that we're picking up from our C2 scanning and what open source reporting there is. I think there's two sort of main takeaways from this. Firstly, Crackbot. It's way down on the list. It wouldn't be a briefing with me unless I mentioned Crackbot at least once. And the threat actor behind it, of course, suffered a pretty significant setback towards the sort of, I think, August, September of last year when Crackbot was disrupted. Well, what we're seeing now is an attempt to kind of revive Crackbot, but also moving to other malware strains. And one of those that this particular threat actor has chosen, we track them as KTA248, also known as TA577, has chosen Pikabot to be one of their sort of initial access malwares of choice. So we saw a lot of that in Q4 of last year. And then I think, as you touched on, Laurie, quite a few of these malwares now in our top 10 are info stealer malwares. And that's something that is that's really interesting. There was a pretty big change up in how info stealers were operated towards the end of last year. Of course, info stealers make up a huge part of the initial access brokership market, as we've been talking about today. But I think one of the most interesting things is they're not particularly targeted. We've seen threat actors drop them as part of their engagements to get credentials from inside a network, but otherwise they're designed to target as many people as possible. That could be victims that are using their home PCs. Of course, these people may reuse or save corporate credentials onto their on their home devices as well, which makes it again really tricky thing to be able to detect and respond to that. And really, you need to sort of wait and until those credentials appear on something like the Russian market, which you can see here. And I know, Laurie, you guys do a lot of work investigating those sorts of logs. So I'll hand back over to you to talk about that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, so this screenshot here that we have on the slide, this is actually from Russian market, and that's one of the dark web shops where they sell credentials like this. So when data is stolen from an info stealer, a lot of times those logs end up on a market like Russian market. And you can see, the listings there, they list it actually by the info stealer, and then what you purchase as an end user, if you're purchasing the listing, is you're getting basically the saved passwords, sometimes the cookies, the usernames for every single credential that user may have logged into on that device. So we see this a lot, unfortunately, in our dark web monitoring. We see organizations, their domains matching in these marketplaces. And a lot of times it may be customers that are being affected there. So it's not necessarily an organizational risk. But sometimes, we do come through those, and what we are more concerned about is what George mentioned, those where they may have, maybe they're using bring your own device or something like that. So they are logging into a part of the network on their personal device. And now there's the potential that threat actor could purchase that listing